I was parked in my cherry red convertible outside the Starbucks on Maple Ridge Drive, engine idling, top down, savoring the 72 breeze while Boston's More Than a Feeling drifted through the speakers. That's when something flickered at the edge of my vision before I could fully turn my head. Barbara Kessler, our HOA president, vaulted over my passenger door like a suburban action hero and landed in my leather seat with the swagger of someone who had just claimed a new kingdom. "Drive me to the community center immediately," she barked, pointing forward like a field commander rallying troops. My electric scooter battery died, and my husband took our Tesla to his golf tournament. "I have an emergency board meeting in 12 minutes. About unauthorized garden gnome placements." Then she snapped her fingers at me twice, sharp little cracks in the quiet morning. I stared at her for a solid 5 seconds. My vanilla latte paused halfway to my mouth. "Barbara," I said slowly, trying to make sense of whatever this was, "you literally just jumped into my car without permission. That's not how anything works." She adjusted her oversized sunglasses and smoothed the blazer. She always wore the one with HOA president embroidered in gold thread, like she was straightening royal regalia. As the duly elected president of Pine Valley Estates for the past 7 years, she sniffed, as if teaching arithmetic to a toddler. "I have executive transit privileges during community emergencies as stated in subsection 47B of our neighborhood covenant. Now drive. We are wasting valuable enforcement time." I carefully set my coffee in the cup holder and pulled out my phone. When the 911 operator answered, she sounded like she'd been having a quiet morning right up until I explained that my HOA president had commandeered my vehicle and refused to leave. 20 minutes later, Barbara sat in handcuffs trying to explain executive transit privileges to Officer Daniels, who looked like he was fighting to keep a straight face while reading her rights. But let me back up for a moment and tell you how I ended up with the neighborhood's most notorious HOA president being arrested in my passenger seat. My name is Mitchell Brennan. I'm a 41-year-old software developer who works from home. I moved to Pine Valley Estates 3 years ago, drawn by the mature oaks, the immaculate green spaces, and what the realtor described as a vibrant community atmosphere. What she failed to mention was that vibrant meant micromanaged by Barbara Kessler with the intensity of a medieval monarch. Barbara, 53 years old, 5'2", in her sensible pumps, carried a clipboard everywhere she went as if it were a ceremonial staff. She'd run unopposed for HOA president since 2017, mostly because anyone he even considered challenging her suddenly found themselves receiving 17 violation notices in 1 week. She once fined the Johnsons $800 because their trash cans were visible from the street for 37 minutes after the approved pickup window. She measured grass height with a ruler every Tuesday. She kept a color-coded spreadsheet of every resident's violations going back 10 years. My own issues with Barbara began innocently enough about 6 months ago, when I decided to repaint my front door. I picked a deep navy blue that looked sharp against my gray siding. The paint was barely dry when Barbara appeared on my doorstep wearing a grimace that could curdle cream. "Mr. Brennan," she announced, sounding like she was issuing a death sentence. "Navy blue is not on the approved exterior color palette as clearly stated in Section 12, subsection C. You have 72 hours to repaint it in one of the 17 sanctioned shades or face daily fines of $100. I tried reasoning with her, even showing her that my navy was nearly identical to the approved colonial blue. But Barbara pulled an actual spectrometer from her purse. Yes, a spectrometer, and proved it was 3 shades darker. That's when I realized I was dealing with someone who desperately needed a hobby or a therapist. Probably both. I repainted the door, but after that, Barbara made it her personal mission to patrol my property like a hawk, searching for prey. My mailbox, she said, was 2 degrees off perpendicular. My driveway had an oil stain the size of a quarter and thus violated neighborhood aesthetic standards. She even tried to cite me for excessive butterfly attraction because my lavender bushes created an unregulated pollinator congregation zone. Things escalated 2 weeks before the convertible fiasco. Barbara sent out a community-wide email announcing a mandatory Saturday seminar on proper hedge trimming techniques. The message was typed entirely in caps, sprinkled with multiple red exclamation marks, and promised violation notices for anyone who didn't attend. I replied politely that I had a prior commitment, which was actually just my plan to sleep past AM for once. Barbara was not amused. She showed up at my door at 6:30 that Saturday morning with the portable speaker blasting the Pine Valley Estates official anthem, which apparently existed. She refused to stop until I opened the door. Still half asleep in my pajamas, I was greeted by Barbara thrusting a 150-page hedge maintenance manual into my arms and informing me that my absence had been recorded in the permanent file. I didn't even have hedges. From there, the absurdity snowballed. Monday brought a violation for automotive flamboyance because my convertible's red paint was too festive. Tuesday brought a notice for repeated top-down infractions, claiming my open roof created a draft hazard for neighboring properties. By Wednesday, she'd invented a new category, vehicular nonconformity, and tried to fine me $300. I'd begun saving all her notices in a folder, partly in case I needed them for court, but mostly because they were so unhinged they were almost entertaining. My favorite was the citation for nocturnal luminosity excess, which she issued after measuring my porch light with the light meter at 10 p.m. Then, the day before the convertible incident, another mass email went out. This time she invoked something called Emergency Protocol 7, a rule no one had ever heard of. According to her, it granted HOA board members emergency powers during periods of community aesthetic crisis. The crisis? The Garcas had planted pink roses instead of red ones, apparently. This posed a threat to the visual harmony of our neighborhood, which brings us back to that Thursday morning at Starbucks, when Barbara decided my convertible was her personal taxi service. After she climbed in and delivered her demand, I stayed surprisingly calm. While she rambled about her imaginary authority, I casually pulled out my phone and dialed 911. She didn't even notice until I was already speaking to the dispatcher. "Hello," I said in my most polite voice, as Barbara's expression shifted toward a dangerous purple. "I'd like to report a trespassing and attempted vehicle theft at the Starbucks on Maple Ridge Drive. The suspect is in my car and refusing to exit. She's about 5'2", gray hair in a bob, wearing a navy blazer embroidered with HOA President." "Yes, I'll remain on the line." Barbara let out a strangled shriek. "You cannot call the police on me. I am a duly elected official conducting official HOA business." She actually lunged for my phone, but I held it out of her reach. "This is mutiny. This is insurrection. I'll have you expelled from Pine Valley Estates," she screeched. "Ma'am," I said evenly, still speaking to the dispatcher, "the perpetrator is now trying to grab my phone and is attempting to assault me. Please send officers immediately." "Yes, I feel threatened." "No, she doesn't appear to be armed unless you count a clipboard." 2 police cruisers pulled up within 8 minutes, which had to be some kind of record. Officers Daniels and Ramirez approached my car cautiously, the kind of posture usually reserved for actual dangerous criminals, far more than necessary for someone whose strongest weapon was her ability to recite municipal codes by heart. Officer Daniels, a tall man with kind eyes and a mustache that seemed transported straight from the 198OS, leaned against my driver's door. "Good morning, sir," he said professionally. "You reported someone trespassing in your vehicle?" I nodded and gestured toward Barbara, who was sitting stiffly, arms crossed, glaring at everything within 50 feet, as though the universe itself had personally offended her. Daniels circled around to the passenger side. "Ma'am, I need you to exit the vehicle." Barbara straightened her blazer and tilted her chin up as if preparing to deliver a royal decree. "Officer," she began, using the tone she usually reserved for scolding homeowners about trash can placement, "I am the president of the Pine Valley Estates Homeowners Association, and under subsection 47B of our community guidelines, I have full authority to requisition resident vehicles during declared emergencies." She produced a laminated card from her purse and waved it like it was her badge of office. "I have jurisdiction here. Officer Ramirez, who looked like he was maybe 12, but was probably a fully trained 25, turned away slightly to hide a grin. Officer Daniels, to his credit, kept a straight face. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "that's not how the law works. HOA rules don't override state or federal laws. Exit the vehicle now, or you will be placed under arrest for trespassing." Barbara hugged her clipboard to her chest as though it were a shield. "This is a conspiracy," she declared loudly, ensuring the growing crowd heard every word. "Mr. Brennan has been conducting an ongoing campaign of violations against community standards, and now he's weaponizing law enforcement against legitimate HOA activity." She turned to the bystanders. "You all know me. I've upheld property values for 7 years." "Ma'am," Officer Daniels repeated, in a voice full of saint-like patience, "last warning. Exit voluntarily, or we will remove you and place you under arrest." Barbara responded by clicking her seatbelt into place and gripping the handle with both hands. Daniels sighed. "Very well. Ma'am, you're under arrest for criminal trespassing and attempted unauthorized use of a motor vehicle." What followed was the most dignified yet absurd arrest I've ever seen. Barbara refused to unbuckle, forcing Officer Ramirez to reach across her while she shouted about HOA sovereignty, which, just to be clear, is not a real thing. Once they finally extracted her from my car, she demanded that the officers allow her to file a formal complaint with the HOA board before they took her to jail. Daniels gently informed her that she'd have plenty of time for complaints at the station. As they cuffed her, Barbara managed to turn back to the crowd, shouting, "Contact Vice President Reynolds. Tell him to activate Emergency Protocol 7. Document this illegal detention. Check subsection 47B. Several people were filming, but definitely not in support. The story hit our neighborhood's social media page within hours. Someone uploaded the video with the title, "HOA President Attempts Grand Theft Auto, Gets Arrested Instead." It racked up 300 comments in the first hour. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd suffered under Barbara's reign. Residents began sharing their own outrageous fines and fabricated violations. Tom Morrison described being fined for aggressive lawn maintenance because his grass was too green. Sarah Kim posted a citation for unauthorized squirrel feeding because squirrels visited her bird feeder. The Hendersons admitted they'd been written up for excessive holiday cheer for leaving Christmas lights up until January, to end apparently today's past the acceptable festive window. The emergency HOA board meeting Barbara was racing to still happened, just with a drastically different agenda. Vice President Reynolds, a mild-mannered accountant who'd taken the job only because no one else wanted it, called the meeting to order in Barbara's absence. First item, her immediate suspension pending criminal proceedings. The vote was unanimous, even from board members who had previously been too intimidated to oppose her. I was invited to testify at a special hearing the following week. I arrived with my meticulously organized folder of absurd violations, the automotive flamboyance citation, the nocturnal luminosity excess notice, and more. I also showed them doorbell footage of Barbara measuring my grass with a ruler at a.m. on multiple mornings. The board was horrified to learn about Emergency Protocol 7 and Barbara's supposed transit privileges, neither of which existed in any legitimate HOA document. The criminal case proceeded over the next 2 months. Barbara hired an expensive attorney who tried to argue she had implied consent to use my car based on community norms. The prosecutor, Jennifer Park, a no-nonsense, sharp-witted attorney, framed it plainly: breaking and entering a vehicle, which it was. Barbara's own statements and emails about her executive transit privileges became evidence of her intent. Worse for her, more misconduct surfaced. She'd embezzled HOA funds to buy enforcement gadgets like her spectrometer. She'd fabricated violations to generate revenue and kept some of the fines. She'd even used HOA money to hire a private investigator to track residents she suspected of infractions. Explaining her uncanny ability to know who left trash cans out for 30 extra seconds, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Barbara was found guilty of criminal trespassing, attempted unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and misappropriation of HOA funds. The judge who said this was the most absurd case of HOA overreach he'd seen in 30 years sentenced her to 6 months in jail, suspended to time served, and 2 years probation. She was also ordered to pay $25,000 in restitution to the HOA and $5,000 to me for harassment. But her punishment didn't end there. Barbara was permanently barred from serving on any HOA board in the state. She was ordered to complete 100 hours of community service, specifically assisting people she'd previously fined. She also had to attend a 12-week course on boundaries and leadership, which the judge said should focus on understanding the difference between community service and tyranny. Her professional life unraveled next. She'd worked as an office manager for a real estate firm, and when her arrest became public, she was immediately fired for reputational damage and concerns about her ethics. Her real estate license was suspended pending review, effectively ending her property management career. The final HOA meeting to officially remove her drew a packed crowd. Vice President Reynolds read the resolution stripping her of her position and banning her from attending meetings for 5 years. When he finished, Barbara stood from the back row, her face twisted in disbelief. "You can't do this," she cried. "I've given 7 years to maintaining standards here. Without me, property values will plummet. You'll have chaos, anarchy, pink roses everywhere." Security escorted her out as she continued yelling about an impending aesthetic collapse. When the door shut behind her, the room erupted in applause. Someone brought a cake that read "Freedom from Tyranny" in green frosting. The Garka family handed out their pink roses as symbols of our new freedom. Barbara's financial situation worsened quickly. The restitution wiped out most of her savings. Her legal fees drained another $30,000. She sold her Lexus and bought a used Honda Civic. The ultimate blow came when she received a violation notice from the new HOA board for leaving her garbage cans out past the retrieval window, a rule she herself had created. The fine was $50. She paid it like everyone else. The last time I saw Barbara was 6 months after the conviction, at the grocery store. She was working as a cashier, her HOA president's blazer replaced by a polyester uniform and name tag. When she saw me in her line, her expression shifted rapidly from anger to embarrassment to resignation. She rang up my items silently until the final obligatory question, "Did you find everything you needed today?" I nodded, paid, and walked away. As I left, I heard her supervisor reminding her to smile more at customers. The woman who once ruled our neighborhood with an iron fist was now being directed by a 20-year-old shift manager. Her empire of citations and violation notices had been reduced to scanning barcodes for $8.5 an hour.